Hey everybody, welcome to Right On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. Today we have an interview with Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson, co-creators and showrunners of the new show Yellowjackets.
I used to think all the sex, the drinking, the drugs, I used to think I did those things because of what happened out there, what I saw, what I did. Hello, Misty, you crazy bitch. It's been a while. I take it you know why I'm here.
Okay, I'm out of here.
We agreed, say no more than we have to. The truth is, the plane crashed. A bunch of my friends died. And then the rest of us starved and scavenged and prayed until they finally found us.
I think we both know there's more to it than that.
Right On, Charday Sellers chatted with Ashley and Bart about their collaborative process, how they pitched the show to Showtime, and more. Check it out.
Welcome back to Right On, everyone. We are obviously here to talk about writing, and today's episode is super, super special because it has been the marquee topic of my group chat for the last couple of days here, and I will explain why. So I am here with creators, writers, and co-showrunners, but also co-partners in life, Ashley Lyle and Bart Nickerson. Is that correct?
That is true.
That is true, yeah.
So are you in the same place, but in separate rooms?
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, we are. Like just as two people who have had to share a lot of Zooms and both being from the great state of New Jersey, there's a lot of this happening. Yeah, like a lot of just wild gesticulation. You just can't both share a square. It's too hard, too dangerous.
And yes, exactly. You need your space so you can use your hands and you can talk and get all the euphemisms out. First of all, I want to say this show has been the topic of my group text with my friends. And particularly the last couple of days.
Oh, you're probably having a very similar situation as what happened in our writer's room where we got personal.
People are confessing murders, like, don't tell anyone. Well, because, if you haven't seen the show, people listening to the podcast, we don't do spoilers here, but I will say the first episode, the premiere episode, which is directed by Karen Kuzma, who I need to ask you about later, but we'll put that on hold. It is available, actually. You can watch it on YouTube Premium, and it's good quality. It's not like someone recording a TV. It's there and it's up. So if you want to hit pause on this tape and then go watch it and come back, you can understand what we're talking about. But definitely, just like you said in your showroom, there's probably some bodies around the country that someone admitted to in the group chat that I allegedly will say. Was inspired because of your show. Now, this podcast specifically is for screenwriters and people who want to be screenwriters, and they love hearing all of that stuff that comes before actual premiere date. So if you don't mind, I would really like to start all the way from the back. So Ashley, starting with you, I did read a little article that said, you were reading either Deadline or Variety, and you saw that there was going to be a retelling of Lord of the Flies, and you went through the comment section. Please tell me if any of this is wrong, because then I can also drag Deadline and Variety for being wrong. That you went through the comment section and that the men weren't so sure that women could be, so competitive, I guess is the word to say, and that this kind of inspired you to talk with Bart about, like, what if we did a show about how competitive women actually are, especially young girls, that they have no idea.
Yeah, no, that absolutely happened. Although the funny part is that, and I probably just did not make this clear in that interview, we were actually already developing this show when I saw that. And so it was more just fuel to our fire at that point than anything else. Of course, also you have that moment of absolute panic that I'm sure every writer has experienced when you're working on something that means so much to you, and then a very similar project is announced and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
But, we're also big believers that everything is execution and there's room for everything if it has a different point of view. So yeah, but it was fascinating, the number of commenters. And I mean, we all know how trolling some commenters can be. So there was clearly an element of that, but it was like, oh, what are they going to do? Collaborate to death? And I was like, okay, all right.
Not knowing how vicious teenage girls are.
Exactly.
Bart, as someone who did not grow up a teenage girl, how was it working with not only your life partner, but your co-writing partner and building these characters? Because they're all girls, they're all women, or identifying, I should say.
Yeah, like Ashley and I have worked together for a really long time. And yeah, I mean, like it's been amazing to work together. We've been all over the place in terms of like the type of work we've done and the type of shows that we've written for and the type of stuff that we've written. Yeah, I mean, it was great, as it always is.
There are probably people listening to this right now who have writing partners, but maybe not many that have writing partners that they also have to go home and live with. So what makes this relationship work? And I mean on a professional level. We're not here for couples therapy, but but yes.
I mean, I definitely think that us being a couple is definitely a strength in terms of our writing, because it's sort of a blessing and a curse sometimes, because I think that we can be a lot more frank with each other and a lot more honest than sometimes writing partnerships. You know, I think you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And obviously we don't ever want to hurt each other's feelings, but we do tend to be a team that we're not always, you know, if I say black, he says white, you know, we tend to look at things from a very different angle a lot of the time. And
that's not true. So lame. I know. I'm sorry.
Great joke.
I think that, you know, it forces us to come to a third conclusion a lot of the time. And neither of us are somebody who is willing to just give in for the sake of giving in. If I pitch something and Bart clearly is not feeling it, or vice versa, even if that person is willing to give in just to like move on, it doesn't sit right. And so there is no just winning. It's really about finding something that we're both happy with. And so it's funny because people always think that you're going to be faster as a writing team. And we're like, au contraire. Sometimes I think it takes us a little bit longer, but I think that we end up with what we hope is stronger work because of it. You know, our first draft of any project is really more like a third draft because we've just both been over it so many times.
And then Bart, let me know if this process was different for Yellowjackets or just in general, but what does writing look like for a twosome? Like, do you take an act, a page, a scene? How does it work?
Writing teams tend to be a little kind of horrified by, if we have like all the time in the world, what we'll actually do is we will write different versions of the same scene. This was something that we started doing right from the beginning, like a little bit when we were more focusing on kind of comedy stuff. And it's funny how often they would just fit together like really, really well, where it would just like, we would both just be like, well, I really like how you started. I really like how I ended in the middle, like this piece and that piece. And like, they would just fit together. That does take 3 times as long. And so what we often kind of like tend to do when we're writing in a little bit more of like a deadline context, which is almost always, we do sort of like, we'll take different cracks at different scenes, but like we're very much not like a writing team that sort of like splits the script, like, and like these things get passed back and forth and shaped and debated and discussed until we sort of like land on this last thing. Yes, we are slower in like a lot of ways, but then I do think we like make up some time at the end because our first draft is actually more like a third or even like a fourth draft.
Right. Right.
Things tend to be like pretty finished just because we do have such a collaborative, debatey kind of process. So it's like the final thing. And like, I do think that we save some time on decisiveness because we feel very confident that we've landed on something that is right or feels good.
And then Ashley, are you guys outliners? Do you board? Do you note card? Like, what is the process there?
We are very intense outliners. I think that, you know, I always dread the outline phase because that's when all the work happens, I think. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like everybody is like, I just find it on the page. I'm like, oh Lord, like that gives me a shiver down my spine because, and I think part of that is because we work together. So there is no just kind of discovering it because we both have to be on the same page and understand what the script's going to be, what each scene is going to be. So we have a pretty intense process in terms of, you know, we note card everything. It was interesting for this show because everything was on Zoom in our writer's room. So we used Miro, a virtual board, but we note card everything. We start by breaking individual storylines, get those working. Eventually we weave them together. And at that point for this show, I mean, we were writing Literally the network was like, thank you guys, when we turn in like an 18-page outline instead of a 25-page outline. We gave them a lot of outline. So
yeah.
Very long and involved outlines that really lay out what the episode's going to be. And then at that point, you just get to have fun with figuring out how you're going to do it. Just deepening the scenes, finding the little twists and turns, finding the good moments for the characters. But if you have a solid outline in place, and our outlines tended to not change from outline to episode all that much.
I totally agree. I love like a very detailed kind of outline. Like I think it is utterly necessary in kind of television where like the situation is often that you have the episode ahead of you and kind of behind you also being written. So like you can't just, because it felt good in like a scene, take this wild left turn. Like it would just be so kind of disruptive to the process. But like I do, yeah. And I mean, I guess our scripts do stay the same scene structural, but like I do find that there are like massive discoveries, like maybe not, if I could make a distinction maybe between plot and story. So it's like I think this, like the beats, the plot will often stay the same, but what those plot points end up kind of meaning, for me anyway, like changes pretty significantly as you get into actually like, having the characters like doing it and like just having it kind of unfold.
And then on that note, Ashley, so the script is done. You're both happy with where we are at. How do we get to showtime? I mean, I'm sure there's a long road in between there, but synopsis wise, how are we getting to showtime to pitch this series?
I guess the simplest version is we worked on our pitch with our reps first, and they were very supportive of this idea. We like to joke, it was actually very much one of those cases of we were working on Narcos at the time, and our rep said, we think we should be developing. And so, they asked us to write up 5 ideas for them. And what is sort of funny is we had 2 ideas that we were in love with that were just deeply weird, which probably sounds funny when we're talking in the context of this show, which is also deeply weird. That should give you a clue as to how incredibly weird these other ideas were. And so we wrote up like a page each on these other 2 ideas. And then I think Yellowjackets was like 4 sentences. So what we did was, we sent that to our agents. And they immediately just zeroed right in on Yellowjackets. They went, this is the one, this is what you're pitching, this is what we can sell. I think our agent Marissa Devon said, if I can't sell this, I'm quitting the business, which was adorable. And so,
that's great. And this means she's still employed then.
Yes, she is.
Okay, great.
Her last night, she is a force of nature. She and Lucinda Moorhead are 2 TV agents at UTA, and we love them both dearly. Yeah, so basically they set us up on pitches with producers and production companies and sort of mini studios. And we pitched to a bunch of places. We found a really great match with the Mark Gordon Company at the time. And that's where we found our non-writing producer. So yeah, we pitched to Drew Cummins, who has a deal at the time Mark Gordon Company. And we kind of teamed up together and worked on the pitch a little bit more. And then we took it out to, I think, like 15 networks. We pitched so many times, and it was all fully scripted and memorized because that's how we have to pitch, especially when there are 2 of us. If we don't have it scripted, it's just too easy to step on each other or have a weird gap. And so we just memorized 35 minutes word for word and then pretended like it was all off the cuff. We just pitched a bunch of networks. We got interest. We were very fortunate to have interest from a few different networks, but we felt immediately like Showtime was a place that was going to allow us to make the version of this show that we really wanted to make, and there would be very no holds barred. And so we rolled with it. It was great.
Bart, what would you say top 3 pieces of advice you could give writers while they're pitching?
The first one is that, the people on the other side, like they do want to evaluate the idea. Obviously, like you can be so good at pitching or so bad at pitching that you kind of get in the way of that. But I think that's maybe at the extremes where it's like you have to be so great to sort of like, sell this idea that like it wouldn't have sold kind of otherwise. And then the reverse is true. And so really the rest of us, I think, are just in the middle. Like it's not a show. I say this to myself every single time before I go into a pitch is like my goal and like my job here is to just not leave with them not knowing what the show was going to be. Like I'm not trying to like make them think that I'm so special, which of course is like the most impossible thing in the world. Number 2, it's kind of related is like, I think the biggest thing that I got from this pitching experience personally was like, I just finally kind of accepted that I have like a pitch voice that's not like my usual voice. It's just like a little subtle tension that sneaks in, and it's almost like it's like really corny. Like I don't mean to do it, but I just like if I know what I'm going to say and like I'm speaking from a script, but it's weird and like it doesn't sound good and I hate it. But I was just like, there's just no getting out of this. Like I just like I can't keep like fighting it. So I'm just gonna accept that this is what it's going to be. The third piece of advice is I think maybe it's also kind of accepting that there is probably, and I don't even have like a feel for all of it, but I think there are so many factors outside of me and my pitch that determine whether or not this gets sold, that it's just like, it's a crapshoot. Yep. And I just don't think it's possible to like sell everybody because they have other things in development, or it's like they have like an existing kind of relationship with somebody in your chain of command. And there's just a billion things that are happening that aren't like necessarily you and your idea. So it's like, just like kind of accepting that would be my three advices.
That's really great. Third point is the timing. And to transition into my next question for you, Ashley, the timing of this is just like you went through a pandemic room, this 90s resurgent where I was actually embarrassed that the 90s is now becoming like the era of TV that we're in, because I was like, that's my era. And I know that's how my mom felt with the 80s going through like their whole thing on TV, but I was like, are we in the 90s now? Is this the thing? Like in the premiere episode, the teenage girls are singing Shoop, and I was like, they're doing the lyrics because they just learned it. They didn't grow up on it. It flows differently when you grew up on it. It doesn't flow the same. So, but speaking of timing, Karen Kuzma, I was coming back to her. It took me a second. Wow, she's busy. But you got her to direct the pilot. How?
I honestly don't know. It still feels like a miracle. Karen was at the absolute top of our list. Of course, once Showtime was happy with the pilot script, the next step was finding a director. And so we made lists, and we've been just huge fans of Karen's work since she did Girl Fight. I mean, I remember Girl Fight. I adore Jennifer's Body. I think it is a deeply underrated film that is now, I think, getting the credit it deserves.
Yeah.
They obviously tried to market it as sort of a sexy horror movie. And it's like, no, it's actually like a horror examination of female friendship in this interesting way.
And how scary that is.
And how scary that is. Obviously, a connection there. And then we love The Invitation.
Yep.
Destroyer. And so we wrote Karen a very heartfelt letter that we sent along with the script. And, it's such a strange thing to do, to write a letter to somebody that you've never met before. And it's really hard to not feel a little bit cheesy when you're writing it. But, I think because it was coming from such a genuine place that, it's funny. I feel like we talked about this with Karen. She's just also a wonderful human being. And it turns out sort of a neighbor of ours. So, we had backyard dinners a bunch, and her husband, Phil, is a screenwriter as well. He and his writing partner, Matt, just did the Benedict Society. Ultimately, she had never done a pilot before, and I know Showtime, Amy Israel, who's one of our execs at Showtime, was like, we've been trying to get Karen forever. I think she just really liked the script. I think it was as simple as that. I'm curious if the letter really made a difference or not.
Was this a handwritten letter?
No, we typed it up. We did type it up.
But it wasn't an email. It was typed.
I mean, I don't know how they delivered it. Like, we wrote it and then we put it in somebody else's hands who sent it along to Karen. So I'm not entirely sure of the mechanics of that. But we did do it.
Follow up with her, like at some point, knock on the door and say, so this letter, how did you get it?
I like to text her as soon as we're done, because now
it came on a bird. It was like a whole
an owl. And that's what sold her. She said, yes, this snail mail, the 90s. That's all coming back. And also thank you for saying Karen, because I've been calling her Karen for years and no one has ever corrected me. I always thought that was her name.
Karen a lot. It's Karen Kusama.
Great. Okay. Now I know that. That's everybody. She directed the pilot, and then we're off to the races. Bart, what should we look ahead to, without giving away anything, obviously, but for the season, should the audience prepare for? Because if you've seen the pilot, you already know that you're already in for a ride, which, first of all, I also want to mention the adult actresses in the show is everyone I grew up with. That's like warm apple pie to me. I'm just looking at that cast going, yeah, Christina Ricci. Yeah, she's everything to me. But what else can we look forward to this season?
I really hope that people can look forward to just like a thrilling, exciting kind of experience. There is like a depth to it that you don't know like what it is. It's just like that drinking from like a subliminal fire hose feeling where it's just like, oh, like this is like so exciting. Man, I really like this.
Well, I can't wait to dive back into it. So my last question for both of you, and I'll say it and then I'll give you some time to think about it, is what advice would you give your younger writer self?
I think the advice I would have for myself is that every time we start a new script, I feel like I've completely forgotten how to do it and what a script looks and feels like. And the advice is that that's okay because it's sort of never going to go away. I mean, we've written so many episodes of television at this point, and it's still incredible how much that blank page feels like, oh God, how does a person do this? You know, I think the most important thing is to just keep going and also to finish things. You know, we never fully had a problem with that, but it's hard. You know, it's hard to feel like something's finished and to let it go and to let it out into the world. But that's the important part because you get a little bit better with every script that you write. And I feel like I early on and so many people I knew would get really focused on writing the perfect script. And that doesn't really exist. It's make it as good as you can, make it as strong as you can, and then write something else. You know, I think that continuing to work and produce. And that's, I mean, when you're a working writer, that's all you can do. It's all deadlines, constantly just writing. And so you can't be too precious. You really can't.
And that is wonderful advice that I need to hear for myself as well. Bart, take us home. Advice for your younger writer self.
Like learning how to write or be like a writer is like something that you, talking to my younger self, will always feel like you are so far behind on and you are so like incomplete. And the way that you do this is insane and weird. And not only is it okay, but it's like you can continue to be like adjusting that approach. And so it's like be okay with it feeling weird and hard, but also like know that sort of like continuing to learn and continuing to grow, especially with like how you access the place where this comes from is, you know, just like reason to be doing this is better, like learning how to get in touch with that place. So yeah, I guess that would be my advice. And then
I like it. Yeah,
I think my second piece of advice would be like, you're not going to get better at explaining any of this stuff. So just do it.
That's wonderful. Yes. just it makes sense in my head. And that's all that matters. Like you guys say, that's the advice. Well, Ashley, Bart, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you today about Yellowjackets, which is premiering this Sunday. Congratulations. And then it'll be airing every Sunday on Showtime at 7 p.m. Pacific. But you guys, you can watch the first episode. I'm telling you right now, it's online. And if you don't want to wait until this Sunday, but I also want to watch it again on Sunday live on Twitter. I love a good live tweet with the rest of the world.
I'm curious if I'll be able to resist because it's like,
I know, right?
So great and psychologically damaging to be getting people's reactions to your work in real time. Yeah, it's exciting. And it's on YouTube. It's on showtime.com, but without a paywall. And so there are a lot of different ways. I think in Canada, it's on Crave right now. I think it's in a few other countries on platforms that I don't know about, but it is out there in the world if you want to watch it.
And there you have it. Ashley, Bart, I'm so excited to have met you. I cannot wait to watch the rest of the season and also to see what you do in the future. But everyone else, we'll see you next time on Right On.
Thanks to Ashley, Lyle, and Bart Nickerson, and as always to Sade Sellers for a great chat. You can catch new episodes of Yellowjackets Sunday night on Showtime. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about new episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc., and on Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This podcast was produced by Kayla Guest and co-produced by Emma Vranich. Editing is by Sean Bonnet. Music is by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.